Hi, and welcome to our audiobook series brought to you by Burgapoly Publishing. Let the journey begin. Today we are presenting
Into the 6th Millennium, The Invasion of Zephro by Robert Skindell. Chapter 1, Deep Space, February 2nd, 5025. Admiral Creer stood motionless before the massive, crystalline viewport of the Clemillian flagship Gorth, watching the eternal abyss. Space was neither friend nor foe. It was a neutral observer of the rise and fall of civilizations. To Creer, it was a stage upon which war was merely a conversation between those willing to shape the future. Admiral, we are within 60 minutes of Hwaseong, the ship's location specialist reported, his vertically slitted eyes reflecting the console's pale glow. Do we have any readings? He finally asked. The specialist hesitated. No, sir. No fleet, no movements, no indication of defense. Creer did not turn. He preferred silence before engagement. Strategy lived in the void before it became action. The Musu fleet should be present. They should be in position, yet they are not. The bridge fell silent. Creer turned, his reptilian gaze sweeping the room. Silence was an answer, but not the one he had expected. He stepped forward, speaking into the stillness. And yet they know we come. It was not a question. The officers exchanged glances. Every mind in the room calculated the possibilities. The Musu were neither reckless nor weak. If they had abandoned their position, it was not due to cowardice. It was by design. Victory was a layered thing, and the Musu were architects of deception. The ship's captain broke the silence. Have all fighter crews man their ships and gunners strap in and be ready. The executive officer tapped his earpiece with his scaly finger. Attention all crew. Attention all crew. Man your battle stations. All fighter crews prepare to launch in less than 60 minutes on my mark. The captain walked over to the location technician and glanced at his monitor. Anything yet? No, sir. The planet is visible, with no ships. It's almost as if they have withdrawn. The admiral stooped closer to the technician. What did you say? Sir, I see the planet, but no ships still, the technician replied. The admiral stared at him and then strode over next to the captain. He glanced at the viewport and thought, no, the other part. Almost as if they withdrew? Yes, that. The admiral tapped his chin with one finger, thought briefly, and then moved his attention to the communications officer. Creer turned sharply to his communications officer. Alert all commands. We hold our approach. Groups 3 and 4 proceed to Hwaseong as planned. Groups 1 and 2 reduce speed to half-light. I want confirmation from all ships. The order crackled across the fleet like an unspoken warning. The officers absorbed his decision in silence. None questioned it. Creer knew they had already begun calculating, assessing the shadow of the enemy's strategy. They were warriors of the Clemillian Empire, but war was not simply a force. It was the art of pushing your enemy to make a mistake before you do. A quiet voice emerged from the shadows of the bridge. The status officer, young, keen-eyed, a recent addition to his staff, but more than capable. He had noted her evaluating gaze before. She was glancing over the shoulder of the navigator while speaking with him in a hushed tone. Creer asked without looking at her, "What do you think?" She hesitated only for a moment. "Sir, it's risky," she said, standing straighter. But it is also unexpected. Creer finally turned his cold reptilian gaze upon her. And that is how battles are won. A slight nod. Yes, sir. The officers returned to their work, movements sharper now, infused with the certainty of command. Creer walked to the viewport, clasping his hands behind his back. Hwaseong loomed in the void, its oceans gleaming against the backdrop of the stars. To the untrained eye, it was serene. But Creer did not trust serenity. He exhaled slowly. The game had begun, and the first move had not been his own. Captain Gorm stepped toward the admiral and leaned toward him. What plans do you have for us? The admiral turned his head and stared coldly at him. We will hold back groups 1 and 2. The Musu think they are going to outsmart us. I have something special planned. This ship will stay with groups 1 and 2. Yes, sir, he replied, knowing he should not ask twice or question further. Helmsman, reduce speed to half-light speed, Captain Gorm commanded. Yes, sir, he replied, tapping the change into his console. Sir, all groups have confirmed your orders, the communications officer announced. Very good, the admiral replied. Speed reduced to half-light speed, the helmsman announced. The captain turned his reptilian head slightly. Heard. 15 minutes later, the first group of Clemillian battle cruisers broke from hyperspace, appearing in formation over the brilliant blue world of Hwaseong. The first act of war is presence. Admiral, all ships have arrived and are launching fighters, came the voice from the communications officer. Creer watched the tactical display. His fleet's presence was undeniable now. The smaller Clemillian fighter squadrons streamed forward, dispersing into predatory formations. And yet, there was still nothing. Nothing. An absence of response was not the same as an absence of strategy. The Musu were waiting. But for what? Behind the mask of silence. Behind the lifeless rock of Toseong, the Musu fleet waited. 26 battleships, their engines idling, their presence masked by the moon. Admiral Rohai, commander of the Garuda, remained composed, fingers steepled before him as he listened to his officers relay intelligence. Admiral, the communications officer intoned, his expression unreadable. The Clemillian fleet is now in orbit around Hwaseong. The traffic I'm picking up indicates only 12 vessels. 12? Rohai turned toward the location technician, his dark gaze narrowing. Confirm it. Yes, sir, the technician replied, hands gliding across the console. Rohai's mind calculated the possibilities. Deception was the currency of war, and this smelled of a ruse. Yet if it were true, if the Clemillians had committed only part of their forces... The technician straightened. Confirmed. I detect 9 ships. The remaining vessels could be positioned on the planet's far side, blocking our scans. A slow breath. Rohai did not celebrate victory before its birth, but if the Clemillians had miscalculated, this would be a slaughter. Let's not waste time. Alert all ships to move in, the admiral commanded, settling into his chair. Engines ignited in sequence, the fleet shifting out of hiding and into attack formation. Rohai's pulse remained steady. They were the blade in the dark, and the time for shadows had passed. The Musa fleet burst into real space before the Clemillian ships, the gravitational wake of their arrival sending ripples through the void. Within seconds, fighter squadrons launched, a tide of warships converging upon their prey. A fleet, vast and cold, materialized from behind the barren moon of Toseong. The Clemillians reacted with calculated precision. Hundreds of interceptors descended upon the Musu fighters, the battlefield erupting into a maelstrom of maneuvers, countermaneuvers, and death. The Garuda shuddered as nearby explosions rocked the hull. The captain barked orders, bringing the flagship's weapons online as Clemillian cruisers adjusted to the sudden onslaught. Move the battleships closer, Rohai ordered. They would engage at knife range, where superior tactics and raw power would crush the Clemillian resistance. He rose from his chair and headed to the bridge window to scan the developing battle. Beyond the viewport, the void burned. The battle had begun. Creer exhaled slowly. So the game reveals itself. The Musu had laid their pieces upon the board, and they had waited for him to advance first. A lesser commander would have cursed and barked an order for an immediate retreat or full-scale engagement. But Creer merely studied the new configuration. The Musu had emerged on their terms, but the battle was far from settled. A game is only lost when you fail to adjust. The clash of titans. On board the Kun Geos, Captain Varash stood rigid, his gaze fixed on the incoming enemy fleet. A Musu formation, a tide of warships converging with purpose. He keyed the fleet-wide communication. Admiral, the Musu fleet is advancing toward us. The response came cold and certain. Do not give way, Captain, Creer commanded. Varash's slitted eyes flicked toward the tactical display. The Musu outnumbered them, 26 battleships against their 12. He hesitated. Sir, we are outnumbered. Creer's voice did not waver. Do not give way. Varash straightened. A true Clemillian does not retreat. Yes, sir. A sudden detonation rocked the ship. A Musu broadside had struck their starboard hull. Warning sirens blared as shields flickered, absorbing the brunt of the assault. The larger Musu battleships surged forward, bringing their weapons to bear on the smaller, heavily armored Clemillian cruisers. Clemillian fighters swarmed into battle, weaving through the chaos, their laser cannons tearing into enemy squadrons. For every Clemillian ship destroyed, the cost to the Musu was greater. The engagement turned brutal, a contest of attrition. Then space fractured behind the Musu fleet. Groups 1 and 2 burst from hyperspace, led by Creer's flagship, the Gorath. They had encircled the Musu. On the bridge of the Garuda, Admiral Rohai cursed. He had miscalculated. The Clemillians had lured him into commitment, and now the jaws of the trap had closed. Creer watched the display, a predator measuring the kill. "Engage the encirclement," he ordered. The void burned with the light of annihilation. The battle was no longer about positioning. It was butchery. "Launch all fighters," he said. "Proceed to secondary formation. Prepare the rams." The officers stiffened. The rams. They were not weapons in the conventional sense. They were blunt force instruments of annihilation, massive armored ships once designed for moving asteroids, now repurposed for a deadlier function. The Musu had never faced them before. This would be their introduction. One ram locked onto the flagship Garuda, its pronged bow glowing with acceleration. A Musu commander might laugh at such crude tactics until the moment the ram struck. Creer observed the board shift, the weight of decision pressing upon his adversary. The Musu thought they had set the trap, but traps work both ways. "Engage," he said. The void erupted into war. The first collision. The Ram-class ships were slow and ponderous, but inevitable. As they accelerated, Musa fighters swarmed to intercept them, only to be met by Clemillian interceptors, smaller, more agile, designed for the sole purpose of escorting the rams to their targets. On board the flagship Garuda, Admiral Rohai of the Musu fleet watched the displays with narrow, unreadable eyes. "An asteroid mover," he said, his tone edged with amusement. "Do they think we are fools?" His weapons officer nodded. "Their desperation is showing." Rohai watched the trajectory. Then his expression darkened. "No, it's something else." The Ram-Layam closed the distance. Too late, the Garuda's rear batteries opened fire. The behemoth did not stop. Creer, watching from the Gorath, allowed himself the slightest satisfaction. The rams were his gambit, and the Musu had failed to anticipate them. The collision was catastrophic. The ram crushed into the Garuda's central superstructure, ripping through shields and hull plating like wet parchment. Explosions erupted from the impact site. The Musu flagship shuddered, hemorrhaging fire and debris into the void. The Layam effectively disabled the Garuda in one move and took out the Musu fleet's high command. The Layam suffered moderate damage but could remain in the battle using only impulse power. The Musu battleship Kapal Temper surged forward, its massive guns igniting the darkness as it bore down upon the Layam. Its crew had witnessed their flagship torn asunder, and vengeance burned in their cold-blooded veins. They came with wrath, with fire, with the intent to raze the Clemillian ship from existence. The Layam was no warship. It was heavily armored, yes, but built for another purpose. Its defenses limited, its shields failing under the relentless barrage. Fire blossomed within its hull, molten fragments of metal venting into the void as Musu fighters swarmed like carrion birds. The Kapal Tempur wheeled around for another pass, a predator scenting the blood of a wounded foe. Then from the darkness, a guardian emerged. The Rajawali, a Clemillian cruiser, burned its engines hot and slid between the Layam and its executioner. A wall of durasteel, a sentinel of defiance. Retaliation. "Sir, the Layam has taken out the Musu flagship but sustained serious damage," the communications officer aboard the Gorath reported. Another pause. She pressed a hand to her earpiece. "A Musu battleship is now engaging the Layam and the Rajawali." Creer's response was immediate. "Helm, full ahead to the Layam." The Gorath surged forward, its engines roaring, its course set. They would not abandon their own. The battle unfolded in a cruel spectacle as the Kapal Tempur bore down upon the Rajawali and Layam, unleashing another volley of merciless fire. The Rajawali returned in kind, its guns barking in defiance, its shields absorbing the carnage. Then the Gorath arrived. "Move into position," Creer barked. The cruiser maneuvered behind the Kapal Tempur, its cannons erupting in a punishing salvo. Fire tore into the Musu ship's hull, rupturing bulkheads and venting atmosphere into space. The larger battleship reeled, its engines flaring to life as it attempted to reposition. But the Musu commander had one final gambit. With a sudden burst of speed, the Kapal Tempur looped around, slipping between the Rajawali and the Layam. The battered Layam, shields nearly gone, trembled under the renewed assault. The final sacrifice. "Sir, the Musu battleship is closing in. Evacuations are nearly complete. I must insist you come with me to a transport," the Layam's executive officer pleaded. Captain Drexen did not turn from the display. "Get going. I have to finish this fight." He tapped his earpiece. "Admiral, withdraw immediately. We are in grave danger of exploding." Creer's voice was grim. "I am not leaving you behind." Drexen ignored him. He engaged the engines. The Layam surged forward, its remaining power diverted to propulsion. It closed the distance with Kapal Tempur, its reinforced bow aimed like a dagger. Impact. A deep, reverberating crash shook the void as the Layam pierced the Musu battleship's hull. A moment of silence, then fire. The Kapal Tempur erupted, torn in half by the suicidal charge. Debris streaked across the night sky, breaking apart as it entered Hwaseong's atmosphere. From the Gorath, Creer watched the carnage. There was no time for grief. The battle continued. The collapse of the Musu fleet. The Musu had miscalculated. Their shields, untested against the Clemillian rams, had buckled and failed in the first devastating charge. What had begun as a battle of tactics and formations devolved into butchery. One by one, Musu battleships bloomed into fire, their hulls ripped asunder by the relentless momentum of Clemillian war machines. What remained of their fleet floundered, leaderless, panic spreading like an infection. The tide had turned irreversibly. Victory had been within their grasp mere hours ago. Now the battle became a rout. The flight of the Musu, the remaining Musu battleships, those still capable of movement, began the desperate work of retreat. They collected what fighters they could, burning hard toward the void, hoping to escape annihilation. Not all would make it. The Clemillian fleet pursued mercilessly, prioritizing crippled warships and abandoned fighters. The Musu, who could not flee, fought savagely, knowing surrender meant only one fate: slavery or slaughter. The Clemillian tradition was absolute. Prisoners were cattle, bodies, and trophies. The victors would roast the fallen, consume their charred remains, and boast of their conquest over the smoldering bones of their foes. The Musu knew this, and so they fought with the ferocity of those who had no choice. But ferocity alone does not win battles. The Supreme Commander's directive. With the last remnants of battle fading, Admiral Creer strode into his quarters and initiated a secure transmission. A scarred, weathered face materialized on the view screen. The Supreme Commander. "Report!" Creer stood at attention. "The Musu fleet is shattered. 12 battleships destroyed. Countless fighters lost." The Supreme Commander nodded, eyes narrowing. "And our losses? 6 cruisers, 2 rams. Fighters are still eliminating the stragglers." A pause. The Supreme Commander sneered. "Spineless reptiles. Their empire dies by degrees." "We are blockading Hwaseong," Creer continued, "awaiting ground troops to take the planet." The Supreme Commander leaned forward. "No, do nothing." Creer did not react, though the order surprised him. "If we move now, we destroy the world." The Supreme Commander's voice softened, but it carried the weight of a hammer. "Let them suffer their defeat. Let them feel our presence. Let them break themselves against the silence. And when they are at their lowest, they will bow." Creer exhaled. "Understood. But I have another task for you, Admiral." The Supreme Commander's gaze darkened, his voice lowering. "We have discovered a new world, one that lies on the fringes of an extensive humanoid civilization. Their defenses are weak. Their resources are many." Creer straightened. "You wish for an expeditionary force?" "Yes, take your flagship to planet Hara in the Mog system. 24 warships and fresh troops await your arrival. We have intelligence from slavers who have sold inhabitants from this planet. We will use that knowledge." The Supreme Commander's eyes gleamed. "This world is perfect. Do not destroy it. Conquer it." Creer saluted. "As you command." The connection ended. Creer turned sharply and strode from his quarters, his guards falling into step behind him. There was work to be done. The bridge fell silent as he entered. Someone announced his presence. "Captain." "Yes, Admiral." "We have new orders. Contact the fleet. Get me a damage assessment and assemble the senior staff in the ready room. Prepare for departure."
Thanks for listening to Chapter 1 of Into the 6th Millennium, The Invasion of Zephro. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss future audiobooks. You'll find links below to get the book, explore more titles from the series, and grab official merch. We've also included some affiliate links to the tools we use to bring this project to life.